Good morning. It's lovely to see you all. I'm just going to set up my timer so not to hold you too long. And my notes in my order. Okay. Is this good? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll set my timer for 20. Let's see how it goes. Pretty much Mika's introduction summed up all 5 pages of my notes, but I thought I'd try and fill the time anyway. Still need to set my timer. Cool. So, hello everyone. I know most of you, some of you maybe not as well. So in the heart of maybe introducing ourselves to newer faces, I thought I could just share a bit about who I am. I guess first things being first, many of you probably know my husband Sean Greaves sitting over there. And for those of you that do know us, you probably know that he's probably the one that should be up here. I got a few random texts this week like, I heard a rumor you were talking at church, like, is that true? And I was like, oh God. And yeah, I got a few of those, and there was a bit of surprise, and I think, this is a first time experience for me as well, but I just thought, gotta live, gotta try things once in a while. But yeah, Sean and I are living in Pinner now. Maybe not so common to all you central-ish Londoners, but this is Northwest Zone 5, pretty far out. Pretty good combination of like countryside, have a farm, but gets you into central in 25 minutes, so it's a pretty good package. We're currently living with another blessed couple, Robert and Christabel Haynes. So what I'm doing when I'm not up here, not preparing for this, I am currently working very close to here, down the road in Paddington, working as part of Network Rail. We are not the ones that cause your train delays, by the way, so please do not make that assumption. I'm working on the Crossrail program in the Human Resources team. I couldn't really tell you what the Human Resources team did. It's kind of a whole variety. I had the pleasure of hosting Damon Cooper with work experience this past week. Hope you had a good time. It was really lovely, I felt. It was nice to be able to kind of give young people some exposure to the workforce and just try so hard to make it seem more exciting than it is. But nonetheless, it's good. Unfortunately, that's the end of my work experience. I've been working at Network Rail for 3 years now. I'm also currently undertaking a master's in human resource management. Again, it's a whole bunch of random stuff, but looking at things like leadership, optimizing or kind of getting the most out of your employees and trying to figure out how we can make the UK a more productive workforce. That is the challenge. Maybe some of you know my parents. I guess he's known as Sandy here, Sandy and Tokiko Stewart. They're now in Pennsylvania and kind of living a very countryside life. My dad likes to go out in the wilderness and can just do that for days and feels very happy. So, that's my parents. I'm trying to kill some time with this intro bit, but I'll move on, I promise. Right, so as I was saying earlier, very fortunate that I can kind of share a life with Sean. He's very much the religious one in the relationship. He's currently working for the European Second Gen Department, just really preparing now for the ramp up of summer activity. Mr. Hayashi, if you could add all of those workshops to your prayer list, please. The next one is the junior in Germany. Junior in Germany, and some mobilization workshop, 21 days. We'll give you the details later. Anyway, so to sum up, Sean had to kind of be my mentor and my coach for this because he's done this plenty. But yesterday he gave me a Bible lesson because what's a sermon without a Bible quote? So you'll get that later. Don't worry. But yeah, it was quite cute. Like I said, Sean, I need this part in the Bible where Abraham does this. And, it took him all of 3 minutes to find the page and the exact kind of bit. And I was really impressed. And, it was quite a sunny day yesterday, so I thought it was a cute thing to do, Bible study. But yeah, it was really interesting to see, the Bible for him is really his reference point. And maybe for unfortunate reasons, I don't know, I haven't had that kind of exposure to the Bible as much as I would have wished. Could blame it on the American education system, I don't know. But it was really interesting because obviously I had to prepare some points for today. And, Sean could really bring the Bible perspective in, but every time he brought something in biblical terms, I had to translate it into business or working terms because otherwise I couldn't get it. But in the end, we found a middle ground, and I think that's the lovely thing about kind of faith. And we all kind of have different ways of getting there, but in the end, we get to the same place. And so I guess that's really the point of today. Unfortunately, I don't think this is really going to be anything new for many of you, but maybe just a perspective or a paradigm to consider when we are kind of assessing our life of faith. And I must preface everything. It would be terrible to plagiarize a sermon. Most of kind of what I'm going to share today as well is a lot of the combination of kind of different authors I've been reading. So there's a man called Ken Costa. He's part of the leadership team at HTB. And he's also an investment banker. So he does a lot of work around faith in the workplace and God at work and how you can live with God every day. And then, so I really appreciate his input, trying to live with God in such a busy and kind of secular world sometimes. But he's very good. I would recommend his book called God at Work. He's just, I think he's just about to release another one, and Knowing Your Why, kind of understanding your purpose in life. And the other source of a lot of this material is from a first-gen couple, David and Takiko Hose. They're kind of American, but they put in writing a lot of the messages they felt they received directly from God, and I thought it was actually, really for me, it opened my eyes to understand a different perspective maybe. Of course, we know God is great and God is grand, but also God is very personal to you, and God is, he's big, but he's in the little things as well. And I guess I'll touch base on that a bit more. Just going to check my clock. Oh, I didn't start it. What time did I start? I didn't start my clock. What? 5 minutes ago? All right, I'm going to knock this down to 15, yeah? Cool. All right, so let's get started. So last week, Mulumba talked a bit about conviction and kind of how he built his conviction. And I think he concluded it saying, if you don't have conviction in today's world, it's very difficult to survive. And, I walked away with that thinking I'm not necessarily thriving, trying to survive, but trying to think, what is it that kind of my faith is built on. And so when I read these things, they really resonated with me, and I just thought, these aren't kind of the only way to view things, but I just thought, hey, let's just consider other perspectives. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of having an authentic relationship to God, not only as a child of God, but maybe perhaps as a friend, and kind of traveling this distance back to God, and how in our daily life the decisions we make kind of determine that journey, and do have an impact, and how faith does really play a role in the decisions we make in the everyday. So that's page 1 done. Okay. So none of us can really deny that God is longing to have a relationship with us. This we know, and this is fundamentally why we were created. And we really have true parents to thank for guiding us in this pursuit, for kind of showing us the way and helping us to understand, how we can really come back to God. And it wasn't an easy path, and there was a huge restorative element that many families have had to experience firsthand, and probably still are. kind of dealing with the aftermath of that. You know, and you know, that's what brings us together, kind of our choice and our belief in what true parents have provided for us. And you know, I feel incredibly grateful that I can be here with you all. And you know, although it's not always easy for any of us, we know that, you know, there are blessings that we have experienced, and you know, we believe there are more blessings to come. You know, and in what shape or form we don't know yet, but that's fine. We don't need to know that much yet. But I guess the biggest thing for me in the past few years is just realizing, like, you know, true parents had this amazing kind of communion and ability to communicate with God and to share that with all of us. But then, you know, it's really to consider that actually all of us as individuals, we have that same potential, and we have that same ability to have this direct communion with God. And, you know, yes, not to say true parents, you know, they had to work so hard and sacrifice so much, but just to realize and to consider that I am just as much a child of God as, you know, as true parents, and as all of us here, you know, we all are children of God, and we all have that potential avenue to explore if we choose to do so. You know, and it's natural when we're going through, you know, we're going through our lives, we look to leadership to guide us, or we look to elders to guide us. And, you know, sometimes they're able to lead us to great places, and other times, unfortunately, it doesn't turn out so well. You know, and I think when it comes to faith, it was very easy growing up to just be like, well, you know, I have to follow my elders, or I need a good leader to tell me what to do, and then I'll do it. But if I don't like what he's saying, I'll ignore it, kind of thing. But yeah, it was just kind of the past few years exploring this idea that actually, like, I don't need to wait for leadership, and I don't need to wait for an elder, because no matter how much, you know, we try to deny it, like, or, you know, I myself am still in denial about it. Like, I'm not a younger second generation anymore, and, you know, there's a whole wealth and flurry of younger second generation that, you know, we need to start considering to raise up as well. So yeah, I think a lot of today is just a kind of result of these considerations to kind of try to tap into this direct access that all of us can have with God as our parents and as our friend. And the biggest thing we have to realize is that, you know, God cannot really love us or work with us if we don't think we're worthy, or, you know, if we don't turn to him and let God be a part of our lives. And there was a really good analogy in one of these books about, you know, a child caught up so much in this idea that he's not worthy of his parents' love. And, you know, so this child goes out and plays in the mud and gets his new clothes all muddy and ruined, and his new shoes are ruined, and he's afraid to go home because he's afraid of what his parents will say to him when he walks in that door. You know, like, just genuinely fearing his parents' response. But the worst possible scenario here, from both the child's perspective and a parent's perspective, would be for that child not to come home at all, right? You know, not only from perspective of, like, where's my kid? But, you know, we're just really wondering, like, are they okay? And for a child to have to be on their own, you know, when they're not ready to be, that's a very scary situation. And, you know, it's just a missed opportunity here for a parent to care for a child. And, you know, when a child comes running in the door with the mud on their clothes, of course we're like, oh, you crazy kids. But, oh, I can't, this isn't firsthand. I'm not a parent yet, but maybe some of you parents can relate. You know, when you see that child, you see the mud, of course, but what you want to do is you want to help get them cleaned up and out of those clothes and cleaned up, because, you know, the presence of the mud on the clothes, it just doesn't compare to what you really see in your child, to the beauty and to the love that you hold for that child. And so, you know, equally, this made me think that, you know, it's wrong to think that we can't stand before God until we are perfect. And
It's often easy to feel these things, but it's the saddest thing, because then we're really denying that relationship and denying that access. And we're blocking that love from both ways, for us to receive it, also for us to give love and joy to God. And often this connotation of a religious person can be quite stressful. I don't know about you, but it's kind of a heavy, burdensome feeling sometimes. And I don't know, it was kind of a relief to be able to read this and know that, like, as imperfect and as immature as we are, that, it's okay to still go to God as you are, and as a starting point, Anyway, more on that to come. So in that sense, kind of, that's point one. So going to God as our real parent, not being afraid to face him. And so the second point is maybe not only viewing God as a parent, but potentially as a friend. And this is something, many times has been explored. And I just thought, I really liked what this author had to say. So I thought I'd share it with you. But, hopefully we all can say that we have closest friends. And but it's good to think about, like, what is it that makes you so close? And what are the perks of that relationship? And what are the perks of that relationship, and kind of what do you experience when you're meeting your closest friends? So for me, when I go to meet Mika for brunch in London, and pay £17 for just a piece of toast and avocado, like, 17 pounds for that. But that's not the point. The point is I'm getting to meet one of my closest friends now, and we get to share with each other exactly how we're feeling, and exactly what we're experiencing. Not necessarily it's the highs and lows of life, but it's just the rawest version of what it is that we're going through, whether it be in our careers or in our houses, in our families. But the best thing for me about brunch with Mika is, like, no matter how silly or ridiculous or selfish or immature I am being, Mika is still listening, and her eyes are still open, and she's not judging the situation. She's just listening. And I think, like, there's a lot that can be learned with this, because Mika's still here as a dear friend, and supporting me through life, and hopefully that's a mutual thing. But it's that we have this relationship where that when we need support, we can talk to each other, and it's about having this relationship, or this channel, to be able to share the deepest part of you with someone. And when you're able to share all this, it's almost like I think David Hose explains it like a spiritual shower, like a cathartic feeling, because obviously we know what maybe we should be more like, and we know maybe we shouldn't be feeling the things we do, but we can't deny the reality that we're still on a journey to maturity, and sometimes we don't have the best perspective on things. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of true friendship. You don't have to worry about sounding childish or self-centered. And I think for me this was a big takeaway to reflect with God, because prayer is a huge part of our life of faith. And if I'm not able to speak to God about what I'm really feeling, then I'm not sure. This author David Hose really talked about, it's very difficult to receive. On the receiving side, to receive something you're not sure is so sincere or authentic. And of course God values all our prayers, but the author of this book, Everyday God, kind of explores this idea that the deeper we're able to share with God, the deeper he's able to receive it. And I just think about, like, if you were to go meet one of your best friends and they just start reciting, like, some chartered document or some strategic aims of a charity, or even talking about some idealistic future, it'd be nice, but I don't know, it might be a bit hard to, like, stay interested. I don't know. Maybe you're all much better listeners than I am, but I think there's a huge element of that personal touch that God really appreciates in our prayer. And as well, like, we don't go meet our friends out of obligation or duty most of the time. Most of the time it's a really sincere, like, we want to speak with them and we want to catch up. And, when I could kind of consider, oh, maybe I should just have a quick one with God, or just, just let him know what's going on. And kind of having that more personal, open dialogue. It just opened a new channel, and one that is kind of more suited to the busy hustle-bustle daily life. So yeah, I really appreciated that kind of analogy that Mr. Hose offered to us. And so, everyone's personality is different. Everyone has a different approach to how they would like to relate to God. Am I almost out of time? Oh, cool. Okay, I can speed it up. Sorry. So yeah, the next bit is about kind of how do you build these relationships? And, obviously we know, it's not all sunny days in our movement at the moment. And I think a lot of my friends I meet are kind of feeling that it's a difficult time, and then it's not really about kind of trying to figure out your allegiances or adoration to others, but to really figure out your relationship with God and your relationship with your community and with your family. And as we know, the fall kind of created a distance between God as our parent and us as his children. And David Hose suggests looking at the religion, or as the institution of religion, as a taxi cab to travel that distance back to God. And so, you go into the cab, the taxi driver, you tell him where you want to go and whatever technology he's using, or maybe he's old school, needs a map. But they get you to the place that you tell them you want to go, and we pay the price for it. Taxis aren't cheap. Well, unless you do some dodgy Uber stuff. But, taxis aren't cheap, and often the religious path you pay a price for, and I'm sure we felt that. But the reality is, as long as that price is worth paying, then, we're happy to do it. And, many of you, we've gotten into this taxi cab and used the route that your parents have set out for us. And the biggest thing that Mr. Hose wanted to emphasize was that, we're not meant to stay in the back seat of the taxi cab forever. And the taxi cab can only bring us so close to the door to our home, but isn't actually going to bring us through the door. And, we have to walk those final steps home. And, individually, we have to have faith and confidence that we can do that, and that, the journey we've traveled so far in the taxi has brought us to a point where we're able to do that. And, it just serves as a reminder that religion in and of itself isn't really the end goal. It's trying to bring you to this place. And, our religious practice and tradition, we need it to serve as a reminder for what we're striving for and what we're building. And, we come to church because we like what it teaches us, and we like the idea of, the ideas that it suggests. And but the key thing about it is really the realization of everything. All these ideas that we are hearing and preaching, and that implementation that we go home with, that we incorporate into our relationships, with our immediate families, and with the wider community, with our working colleagues. This is just a general public for anyone. So in this idea of understanding where we are actually trying to go, it's understanding, what is God's vision and what is True Parents' vision, and what part of it are we working to contribute or build to or get to. And there was this really interesting seminar about management, and I thought it was very relevant to managing our spiritual lives as well. And it's talking about how do you get the most out of your people. But here, in this instance, it would be thinking, how do you make sure your spiritual life is on track, and how do you make sure you're headed where you want to be? And do you know that company, the Green and Black's chocolate? It's quite good chocolate. White chocolate's the best flavor, I think, but it's like organic. It's doing quite well overall. And the co-founder, she had a very simple analogy for her success of management, and she talked about just two really simple tools she uses. One being a microscope to look at the detail, and a telescope to kind of look out into the future and the bigger picture. And so, yeah, upon reflecting, it was a lot about, looking in greater detail about us and our actions, and how much do our actions and thoughts reflect what we believe and preach, and how much are we really pushing ourselves to become better and to become greater. But so that's kind of in the detail, in the everyday of your responses and what's going on there, but also making sure we're looking up and out enough and looking to the future and trying to understand kind of where we're headed, but also what are the challenges that lie ahead and are we prepared for them. So yeah, I quite like that, the two management tools. But yeah, and for this, for me, it really serves as a reminder that, church and, meditation, prayer, whatever works for you, is really to remind us to pull out these tools to make sure we're looking deeper into the detail, and also to be reminded of that bigger picture. Just a few more points. So a big area of faith and kind of its presence in our lives is in the decisions we make. Because ultimately it's these decisions that kind of determine our path. And many times people kind of face paralysis. You see this a lot with students finishing university and really not having any idea what they're going to do next. But Ken Costa talked about this being like a paralysis, like we as individuals are just pleading for God to guide us in the hope or expectation that he'll make the decision for us, because we don't want to, like we can't make the decision, so God, just do it for us. But then equally, you think maybe God's really hoping for us to make a move, and for hoping we can make a move so God can support us, kind of thing. And the best explanation I've heard of this is really that like a ship can't really sail until it's gone off the shore. And Ken Costa, through his example in investment banking, talks about often, he doesn't know what the best choice is, but they have to take the first step and the first risk, and from there determine if that is a good investment or not. So he said, it's a quite nice quote, it's really difficult to navigate while, still on the dock. And once you're out of the harbor, you can feel the currents and the wind and set a course from that. But the first bit is that, at our discretion, we have to be the captain, and we have to take that first step. And then God can really back us. And I thought this was really relevant, kind of in terms of faith. So here's the Bible bit. So we're looking at Abraham. It's the story of Abraham in Genesis 17:1. It's a very short quote, as the bit about making of the covenant. And then, so it says, I am God Almighty, walk before me and be blameless, and I will make my covenant multiply you exceedingly. And in our Bible class yesterday, we were talking about, this is really saying something, that it's not really about waiting for God to take action in our lives, but for us to take the first steps. And the way we do that, kind of the be blameless bit, is to do what you think is right and following your conscience and trusting that, and living according to what you understand to be right and important in life. And, in Abraham's case, it was living in respect to God and the covenant that God made with him. But I think in our lives, it's equally relevant to think, God said here to walk before him, and it didn't say to stand. So for me, this implies a motion and an activity, a kind of movement, and before him, and that he can be behind us and let us know, kind of help steer us a little bit. But of course, it's circumstantial. But I think a lot of times when we're stuck making decisions, this perspective can often help. So one thing that Sean had to educate me on was that, it wasn't as simple as God could make this covenant with Abraham, but it was really that, Abraham had already understood and had a relationship with God, and there was a certain level of trust that God could have with Abraham, and that Abraham could follow his conscience and trusted him with that. And this was really shown in that Abraham really sought the true God, and he really sought this God as a being, and he challenged this idea of idol worshiping that everyone else around him was kind of dedicated and practicing. But when Abraham could kind of discern that maybe this wasn't necessarily the best practice of worship, and it was through this identification, but then Abraham's pursuit of a relationship with God, that covenant could be made. And so if we want God, I think ultimately the point is that if we want God to support us in our relationships and in our decisions, then we have to be constantly feeding into that relationship and building that, and letting God know that we can be trusted, and that we are thinking about things and not just making sporadic decisions. You see this all the time in the workplace. Like in the workplace, the way it used to work is you would come in and say you would fill, I need this, and this done, a kind of command and control. But things are kind of changing in that, people are wondering why are we so unproductive as a workforce? We are very unproductive, actually. And there's this whole idea that it should no longer be about command and control, like listen and obey, and I lead, you follow. But things are really changing in the workplace, and that it's becoming a lot more about what do you as an individual want to contribute, and how are you going to help this business to achieve its goal, and how can leaders or managers support you to do that. And it's quite a different shift in the approach. And I just find it really interesting that this idea is popping up many places, but only when we as employees or as individuals are able to prove that we're making good decisions. That's how we get the support of our leadership, and that's when we say, hey, we want to make this investment. They're happy to back us because they know that we're thinking things through. Final points. God made a lot of promises to Abraham, but I didn't necessarily feel that he was saying it was going to be easy. And for me, what I really took from that excerpt was that he would be backing Abraham in his course, and that much like our faith is not about kind of making the storm go away or finding a way out of the storm. It's about weathering us through it and finding a way to navigate through whatever we may be facing. And I think even if our first step doesn't necessarily put us where we want to be sometimes, it's just an opportunity to adjust and kind of pull out our telescope and our microscope and think, hey, are we where we want to be? Is this the right thing? And I think if we can just kind of remind ourselves once in a while that it's good to take a step back and think, where are we in the context of where we want to be as individuals in our relationships, but also what are we trying to build. My favorite quote is the last one. It's from a movie, Junebug. Don't know if any of you've seen it. It's kind of old. It says, God loves you just the way you are, but too much to let you stay that way. And I just think it sums it up. God has just this unfailing love for us, in each and every one of us as individuals, but he also knows there's so much more in us, and there's a greater maturity and greater depth and an intimacy that we can share with God and those around us. And this is part of our journey of faith, and it's something we should be pursuing. And just to sum up, I think a lot of that starts with the authenticity of your relationship, our relationships with God, and from that, kind of letting that determine our journey and our path back to really being one and being close with God as our parent. And this can be done in the everyday choices we make, and that can really determine how much space we really make for God to work with us. So I will wrap it up there. Thank you all very much.